preface. So basically I wrote my senior thesis as a book, a 14-page book, so I kind of call it more like a pamphlet or a instructional manual. So just bear with me. So I'm going to be your presenter today for my first and probably last ever Can Talk, and it's about Dead Funny. So this is the book that I read. I don't know if you guys remember when I kind of came up here and presented my middle of the year research. It was an interesting book. We're going to get into that a little bit later, where I'm going to kind of give you guys a little synopsis, but let's get started. So the title of my book is called Under the Skirt. Again, my cool font did not transfer, but if my book had a cover, this is what the cover would look like. I called it Under the Skirt because, well, first of all, credits to Megan Bray. She actually came up with that title. And so basically when you think of under the skirt, a skirt usually covers up your underwear or your Spanx or whatever you're wearing underneath the skirt, right? So the reason that this title, number one, it's catchy. It makes you kind of go, what the heck? And number two, it's kind of a metaphor, I guess, kind of symbolism, whatever you want to call it, for the fact that under the skirt there's a secret, there's something we don't know about. So we have to go under the skirt and discover relationships. So, Presley, I know you're looking at me like crazy. So we're going under the skirt. Okay, so all of you are like, what the beep? Katie, you were crazy. And just slightly. So essentially what happened was a year ago, okay, it was 2017, it was April. And it was junior year, y'all know it was crazy. And I don't know what happened, but I decided that I was going to write a book. And I called it The Book. It didn't have a title. And there's a note on my phone that I started April 25th, 2017, and I came up with some chapters. And I'm like, I'm going to write this book. And it was about relationships. Now, I don't have any experience in that field at all.
Jason.
No, shut up. No experience in that field whatsoever. So you're obviously thinking, what does she know about this? But I experienced it a lot. I saw a lot of people fall into these really nasty high school relationships. And I was just kind of disgusted. And so I was sitting there and I decided that I was going to write this book where I was going to basically be the strong, independent woman and just denounce relationships as completely evil. That was definitely not the right way to go. So I decided that with this book, I was going to take a different approach. And instead of being mean and condemning people for having relationships and making fun of them, and I had chapters like living in a world of hoes, and my other chapter was instilling fear in the men. Like it was bad. So I decided a different approach was necessary. So this new approach that I decided was going to be more of celebrating the individuality of a relationship and celebrating how you can still be yourself, have your own opinions, have your own views, maintain your own self while being in an intimate union with someone. So you can be an independent person in a relationship, and so that was the end-all goal of this book, is to be true to yourself while being in a strong relationship and hopefully avoiding things like cheating and all that nasty stuff. So, and I realized I also was being kind of sexist in the first book. You can be a strong, independent man too. So don't let them tell you it's only girls.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so let's talk about this book and how on earth I could have tied Dead Funny into my life's mission of creating independent people. It is not okay. It's just a frustrating book. I didn't die when I read this, and I didn't laugh at all. I was so uncomfortable. So basically, what happens is the title suggests Dead Funny. It's this club, and what they do is they get together and they talk about dead comedians, and they like dress up as them, and they sell it. They have these little like gatherings, and they drink wine and make fun of like the comedians. Okay, seems normal. That's what the title suggests. What really happens that they didn't tell you about in the little description that I read before picking the book was that it's about, there's this couple, Eleanor and Richard, and they have this really nasty, really not good it's a bad relationship, because Eleanor's like, I want to have kids, and Richard's like, no, and then Eleanor's trying to pressure him. Again, red flags, things that we're going to talk about. But it ends up with, Richard ends up starting an affair with his best friend's wife, and it just gets really gross and disgusting, and I was just like not having it, and I was really uncomfortable. So, what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about, first, we're going to talk about forming a relationship. How do we get there? How on earth did Eleanor and Richard even wind up together? And how on earth did that affair get started? Second, we're going to talk about societal expectations and the influence of society in our relationships. And third, we're going to talk about other people, the other person, you know? And again, just keep in mind, I really don't have that much experience, but everything I'm saying is based on facts and based on a book, so it gives me credibility. Relationships are everywhere. You guys know that. There are definitely probably people in this room that have been in a relationship, are currently in a relationship, any of that stuff. So relationships are everywhere. And I kind of ask myself, even with like friendships, how on earth did I become friends with somebody, or how do you get into a relationship with someone? And so in Dead Funny, Eleanor and Richard don't really have a strong foundation for their relationship. They basically, when Eleanor is talking, oh, this is love at first sight, blah, 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 Richard goes, no, it was serious professional misconduct. Eleanor was a nurse and Richard was a doctor. And so they were like, I guess, dating at work. And so I agree with Richard, professional misconduct. But obviously their relationship's not based on anything, it's just infatuation. And Terry Johnson doesn't say anything about really important stages in a relationship. He doesn't talk about how they dated. He doesn't talk about whether or not they met each other's parents. They didn't talk about whether or not they discussed important topics like children before they got married. So, in my opinion, relationship that's not really based on a strong foundation. And so in looking at some therapists and kind of marriage counselors, I discovered that there are 3 really important stages that you have to have in a relationship before you can really commit. And first, it's you need to build, explore, and establish. So you need to create this connection where both of you guys are on the same page and there's not going to be any room for discrepancy. And so that's the problem with them, is they don't do that at all. So then we can kind of think about, I know y'all probably not read Dead Funny, but y'all can all relate this back to Atonement, right? Everyone in here read, or maybe read Spark Notes, or maybe watched the movie of Atonement. So we all know that in that relationship, I think there's a quote, and the quote is, everything that they had rested on 5 minutes in the library like 2 years ago. That's them. They have no foundation, there's no basis for this relationship. And so you cannot base your relationship off of like 5 minutes or off of infatuation. It has to have a stronger connection. It has to have a stronger basis to be formed. And then we can also look at, in the context of establishing relationships, we can look at how we get an affair. So what happens is Richard starts an affair with Lisa, and Eleanor's just kind of like, okay, so you won't have sex with me, but you'll go have sex with your best friend's wife. Okay. I was a little confused on that too. But basically what happens is it's based on lust and it's based on convenience. Lisa just happened to be there and he's just like, okay, let's just do it right now. That's how I interpreted it. But it's not based on any foundation. It's not even like, some people have affairs and it's like, oh, we work together and we like each other, stuff like that. No, this is just, hey, you're here, let's do it. So, not good. Again, there's no foundation for this relationship. And obviously that's going to be problematic. And so what happens is there's an affair and it's based on this sense of entitlement. Therapists, marriage counselors, they talk about how people feel entitled to have an affair just because they feel feelings for another person, or they feel like they deserve to have that. They have an affair, and that's not true. You never have the right to cheat on your person, never, So, just saying, don't be Richard. And don't be Lisa.
Preach it, sister.
Thank you. Okay, so now we've got to actually maintain the relationship. So you've gotten it, you've formed it, hopefully you build, you establish, you explore, and you have that foundation. So now you got to fight society. Eleanor expects this romantic, intimate relationship and doesn't really get out of it what she wants. She is nearing the age of 40. She's 39 at this point in the book, and she really, really wants kids. And she makes sure that Richard knows that she really, really wants kids. She tells him, hey, I'm getting close to 40. And then the next page she says, hey, I wish you were normal and I wish we had a normal sex life. So she really pressures Richard and makes him feel really, really bad about not wanting to have kids. And I'm not defending Richard at all. I'm not doing that. But what I'm saying is that she doesn't respect that Richard has feelings. She doesn't respect that Richard has his own perspective on things. And she is falling into this societal norm that you have to have kids by a certain age. In order to have a happy marriage, you have to have kids. And that's not true. While a lot of marriages do have kids and they are really happy, that doesn't mean that that's the right thing for their marriage. And so, yes, it's true. In looking at some statistics, there was a study conducted in, I believe it was Australia, and yes, they found that most couples have kids around 20s and 30s. So Eleanor and Richard are definitely getting kind of towards the end of that spectrum. But that doesn't mean that Eleanor needs to be pressuring him. That's not right. And they also have a marriage counselor that decides to pressure them. So they go out and they get a marriage counselor by the name of Marion, and she's awful. She tries to come up with this plan. She gives them these videos to watch. Not pleasant. So again, it's this expectation that there's this feeling that there's something wrong with them, that they have to go to a counselor, that they have problems because they just don't have kids and they don't want to. So society is trying to diagnose a problem and make this a problem when it might not necessarily have to be one. And then I think we can all relate to this. While Eleanor and Richard don't really have this in their relationship, we can all relate to seeing things on social media, to seeing things, especially on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, of these really happy couples. They post all these really cute pictures, and they look so perfect, and they have all these lovey comments, and it's, I love you, like forever. We've been dating 2 months, but I love you. And so it's really easy for us to fall into that trap of thinking, oh my gosh, there's something wrong with me. I don't have this relationship. Oh my gosh, like I need a boyfriend or a girlfriend. And that's not true. Strong, independent man or woman. But what is happening is we're trained that we have to have a relationship to be happy, and that's not true. And we're trained that we have to abide by society's kind of guidelines for us and for our relationship, and that's not true. So, we've talked about forming the relationship, we've talked about society, now we're going to talk about other people in your relationship. Let's first talk about friends. I don't know about you guys, but I'm definitely that friend that offers unsolicited advice, and Brooke's like nodding her head, unsolicited advice about guys, and I'm slowly working on getting better. My new strategy is I'm going to talk it out, and then let the other person formulate a plan, and I'm just going to critique and add feedback. So I'm working on being a lot more open, as opposed to saying you suck. That's the worst idea I've ever heard. So what we're trying to do is our goal is to be friends and not have friends. We're trying to be friends that are uplifting and encouraging, not have friends that offer us unsolicited advice that really just tries to make us feel bad. So what Lisa says is, Lisa goes up to Eleanor and she's like, hey, I heard that you and Richard are having some problems. Yeah, they're having problems because literally you're the one cheating, or whatever. She's the one involved in the affair, but that's beside the point. Obviously, yes, they have problems. And what Lisa does is Lisa comes up and she's like, oh, if you and Richard just had a common interest, you guys would be so great. This was so uncalled for. She didn't ask for that. So that's definitely Lisa just trying to be like, oh, look at me, look at my great relationship. And so please don't be that friend. Let them live their life, let them have their relationship, and just, it's going to happen. And we also have bad friends that give just blatantly bad advice. And that's Nick. Not that Nick. But this Nick in this book, literally, point blank, tells Richard, he says, I'm really jealous of you. You're a doctor. You could have an affair with any of these nurses and get away with it. I mean, is that not bad advice? And I personally think that that's what kind of gets Richard into this mindset that he can have an affair, and it's accepted. His friend is telling him, you can do it, and you should do it. So, obviously we have those friends that are just not really there for us and don't have our best interests in mind. And so we need to make sure that we're the good friend and we avoid the bad friend. So, what about you? How can you stay true to yourself in these relationships? Number one, don't settle. If you have viewpoints, if you have opinions, and you believe something, stick to it. Just because I don't like the same political figure as my boyfriend doesn't mean that we have to break up, and it doesn't mean that we have to get into a giant fight about it. We can agree to disagree. And you don't have to settle for anything less than you deserve. Your standards, keep them high. Don't ever lower them. Don't think, oh my gosh, everyone has a boyfriend and I don't, I need to lower my standards. Absolutely not. If you want your boyfriend to have a 4.5, then he's got to have a 4.5.
Amen.
Woo! And again, just don't abandon your beliefs. Don't abandon your beliefs. Please, just don't. Because what happens is, then you develop this relationship where you're just a pushover, and we don't want that. We want you to be you, stay true to you, and stick to your guns, figuratively. I'm not supporting real guns. I'm saying stick to your figurative guns. So what that essentially means, that's just an idiom, a metaphor. And so we have a character in the book named Brian. And Brian comes out as gay literally in like the second to last page of the book. And so I'm like, okay, Brian, you do you. And all the characters are mean to him. I don't understand. They're all like, oh, Brian, you're so, they called him some nasty words that I don't want to repeat. And I was like, okay, these people are supposed to be your friends. So, again, support your friends. And what Brian does is Brian sticks to his guns. He doesn't back down. He doesn't say, oh, I'm sorry for being gay, I'll just be straight. No, yes. I mean, he sticks to his guns. I know, he sticks to his guns, and I'm so proud of him because he doesn't apologize. He doesn't look for acceptance. He's like, this is what I am. This is how I feel. And if you don't like it, then you don't like it. And I think we need to all have that Brian mentality. Okay, so that's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions or anything, just let me know.